Welcome to this explainer. It's incredibly fascinating how the exact same look, in this case the classic dark suit, was used in mid-20th century America for two radically different purposes. On one hand, to completely obscure the truth, and on the other, to pull it out into the daylight. It's a really deep dive into how a single iconic symbol can be weaponized by the state while simultaneously being reclaimed by an artist to define an entire era. So, let's jump right into this by asking a question that has fueled decades of paranormal legends, pop culture hits, and even American musical history. Who really are the Men in Black? When you picture a man in black in your head, what do you actually see? Are you picturing a shadowy government enforcer threatening witnesses and wiping memories in the dead of night? Or do you hear the steady, rhythmic strum of a legendary country musician's guitar, echoing from a brightly lit stage? Today, we're going to take a close look at both of these icons. These dual definitions on the screen brilliantly illustrate what we're talking about today. We're looking at the Men in Black as both shadowy silencers and, quite unexpectedly, as a bold beacon of truth. Both versions of this figure have become permanently etched into our American mythos. It's really a tale of two vastly different American experiences that just happen to share the exact same uniform, operating at the exact same time in history. Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the origins of the MIB, look at the great UFO deception, and Hollywood and the cover-up. Then we'll pivot to a different Man in Black, explore the politics of empathy, and wrap up with two suits, two missions. Let's get started. Section 1. Origins of the MIB, or the birth of a paranormal legend. Let's start with those shadowy figures that emerged at the very dawn of the modern UFO era to silence everyday citizens. So the stories of these men absolutely didn't start out as Hollywood blockbusters. The modern UFO era kicked off in 1947, and that same year, a man named Harold Dahl claimed to see these bizarre donut-shaped aircraft dropping debris over Maury Island in Washington state. Well, the very next morning, a man in a stark black suit took Dahl to a diner and casually recited exactly what Dahl had done the day before, threatening him to stay entirely silent. Wild, right? Then, in 1953, UFO researcher Albert Bender was running a global flying saucer club out of his bedroom. He abruptly shut the whole operation down after being visited by three terrifying men in dark suits who claimed they knew the true secret of the UFOs. Fast forward to 1979, and a guy named Paul Benowitz is sitting alone in the New Mexico desert late at night, convinced he's intercepting alien telemetry. And sure enough, the dark suits arrive at his door. Which brings us to Section 2, the Great UFO Deception, or hiding in plain sight. What if these mysterious visits weren't about hiding aliens at all, but instead about hiding something much closer to home? Okay, the sources reveal a twist here that's honestly maybe more shocking than an actual extraterrestrial visit. The US government executed this exact playbook you see to mask classified military technology. Remember Paul Benowitz out in the desert? Well, he lived right across from Kirtland Air Force Base. When he excitedly reported his alien findings, the military realized he was actually eavesdropping on top-secret earthly defense projects. But instead of just arresting him or telling him to stop, intelligence agents decided to lean completely into his alien theory. I mean, they practically set up a movie set in the desert. They dumped fake alien props in the sand for him to find. They even attached flashing lights to experimental ultra-quiet helicopters and flew them around at night purely to convince the civilian that flying saucers were real. They were literally weaponizing sci-fi tropes to gaslight their own citizens and protect Cold War secrets. Moving to Section 3, Hollywood and the cover-up. Crafting the mirage. This massive deception was masterfully orchestrated by intelligence officers who knew exactly how to manipulate the human mind. Just listen to this pitch. Air Force Special Investigations Officer Richard Doty would actually approach credulous UFO spotters and say, "I'm with the government. You cooperate with us, and I'm going to tell you what the government really knows." Doty and his colleagues completely preyed on the community's wildest dreams. They fed them customized paranoia, fake documents, even computer software designed to decode fake alien languages. They knew the believers would eagerly do the rest of the heavy lifting. But tragically, in the case of Paul Bennewitz, this psychological manipulation took an agonizing toll. He became so consumed by the government's customized maze of lies that he suffered a total mental breakdown, and his family had to check him into a psychiatric facility by 1988. The dark suit here wasn't some cosmic alien ambassador. It was a tool of ultimate deception, a mirage meant to distract and ultimately destroy.
Now let's flip the script. Section 4. A different man in black, turning the motif upside down. Right as the government was actively using the man in black persona to plunge people into darkness, an American music icon adopted the exact same look to drag the truth out into the daylight.
Let's set the scene for a second. It's early 1971. The Vietnam War is raging and the country is deeply, painfully divided. Just a year prior, Johnny Cash had performed at the Nixon White House and was widely viewed by the establishment as a safe, comfortable symbol of the silent majority. But then, Cash steps out onto a stage at Vanderbilt University, facing a crowd of young college students who are highly vulnerable to the military draft. The tension in that auditorium is palpable. He walks out dressed entirely in stark funeral attire. He literally pulls out a set of cue cards because he had just finished writing the lyrics to his brand new song that very morning. He was taking a massive personal and artistic risk here. He was no longer playing the part of the silent majority. He had something urgent to say. Section 5. The Politics of Empathy. A Voice for the Voiceless. Cash's black suit wasn't a tool of intimidation or state control. It was a deeply personal expression of mourning and solidarity. See, instead of picking political sides, Cash used his massive platform to speak for those who were suffering on the margins of society. And keep in mind, Cash was an Air Force veteran himself. After touring in Vietnam and watching 18-year-olds being loaded onto medevac helicopters day after day, he saw the visceral human cost of the conflict firsthand. He let his faith drive his actions. He wore black for the downtrodden on the hungry, hopeless side of town. He wrote songs demanding that society not turn a blind eye to the prisoners locked away and forgotten. He wasn't just up there trying to entertain, he was actively pressing his fellow citizens to look around and lift up those left behind. This powerful lyric from Johnny Cash stands in such stark contrast to the government agent's threats of silence. When Cash performed this song later at the Ryman Auditorium for a group of servicemen, dedicating the outfit as his official uniform, his voice filled with such gravity and emotion that it rose almost to a shout. And the audience? They gave him a thunderous ovation. The suit essentially acted like a sponge for the nation's grief. It absorbed the darkness of those troubled times, reflecting the sorrow of a nation rather than hiding its secrets in the shadows. Finally, Section 6. 2 suits, 2 missions, a thematic mirror. Let's bring these two vastly different narratives together to see what they actually reveal about the culture of mid-20th century America. This brilliantly illustrates an incredible paradox and reveals a profound truth about how symbols work in our society. The dark suit is essentially a blank canvas of authority, right? Institutions often rely on that kind of imagery to enforce conformity, project power, and maintain secrets. The government agents use the dark suit to say, "Forget what you saw, stop asking questions." But Johnny Cash proved that artists can hijack those exact same symbols of power and completely invert their meaning. He took the uniform of the establishment and turned it into a uniform of rebellion and compassion. Cash used the suit to say, "Look at what is happening. Start caring. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you to ponder this final question about the symbols we create, how they're manipulated by those in power, and how they can be so powerfully reclaimed. The next time you hear a spooky story about a man in black or hear that iconic Johnny Cash chord progression, ask yourself, is the suit being used to cover something up, or is it daring us to finally look at the truth? Thank you for joining me on this journey through deception, empathy, and the incredible power of a simple dark suit.